This is the messaging. It's a budded soundbite of a bunch of lefties and those in the media trying to put their spin on what actually is happening, according to them, in Florida because of this one line. Take a listen.
How dare you? Shame on you people in Florida. How dare you try to whitewash slavery?
This is happening in Florida. This is happening in Florida where you have a governor who has an anti-woke bill, who has a don't say gay bill, who wants to ban DEI programs, who wants to ban Rosa Parks.
This would be like teaching the Holocaust, saying that there were some good things that Jewish brothers and sisters picked up in those death camps that, should they survive, would be helpful for them to make their way in life.
My rule in writing columns has always been never compare anything to the Holocaust and never compare anything to American slavery, because they were both unique horrors, and these standards break that rule.
And for this man, Ron DeSantis, who's apparently his only skill that he has acquired is lying and creating culture wars that he thinks are going to make him president.
The dishonesty is stomach-turning.
It's astonishing. I mean, there's two problems here. The first one is that this line has been extracted and miscast from a sea of appropriate instruction. The second problem is that progressives have inverted their usual attitude toward the teaching of this sort of history. And Dr.
Yes.
Allen touched on this in the previous segment. When I was at Oxford studying history, I had a professor who was a progressive, probably more, a Marxist, you might even say. He was an open-minded guy. I liked him a great deal. And one of the things that he used to say to me was, Abraham Lincoln was not the only man with agency, you know. I can hear him saying it now in a Scottish accent. The point that he was making was that while people under slavery and under the Holocaust, for that matter, were, of course, victims, they were not only victims, that they were also people, and that it does a great disservice to treat them as some inhuman, undifferentiated mass of widgets. That, of course, this was a massive historical disgrace, but that doesn't mean that you don't tell the stories of the people who lived within it. It is not in any way to endorse slavery to point out that some slaves developed skills that they subsequently used for their own benefit, either to purchase or achieve their manumission, or after the Civil War, when slavery was mercifully ended. That is a logical fallacy. And in most other contexts, it would be self-evidently a logical fallacy. For example, our modern triage procedures that we use in hospitals originated from the Crimean War. We made massive advancements in medical technology in the First World War. Is to acknowledge that, to propose that those two wars were worthwhile? Of course it's not. There was a piece in the New York Post a couple of years ago by a couple who met in a concentration camp and had been married ever since. Do we take from that they are pleased that they were put in a concentration camp? That the Holocaust was a good thing? This is such silly, anti-intellectual, demagogic thinking that no one truly believes, least of all the people who I think quite rightly have spent a lot of time within the history profession making it clear that we ought to treat humans as humans and to ascribe agency to people, even in the most difficult and tyrannical of circumstances. So even on its own merits, the idea that one line that has been plucked out in some way endorses or whitewashes slavery is absolutely ridiculous.
Steve Krakauer, our executive producer, told us that when he was in Hebrew school, he was taught in Hebrew school that the Holocaust taught Jews resilience. I mean, so the horror of Eugene Robinson saying you just never bring, that you wouldn't ever say something like, well, yeah, you might. And these education standards don't violate his rule of comparing slavery to anything. It's an honest exploration of slavery by, as Dr. Allen pointed out, someone who has a stake in this, who's got a family history connected to it, who's got real reason in making sure the truth is taught. When my kids were at their, again, far left New York City private schools, I complained, Charles, that my son, my eldest, but at the time he was in like second or third grade, came home. They were studying the American Revolution, and he could tell me 12 slaves who made a meaningful difference in the American Revolution, but they didn't hear anything about General George Washington. So they bent over backwards in these liberal woke schools to tell you all the great things the slaves are managing to doing during slavery. But once it comes out of Florida, which happens to have Ron DeSantis as its governor, all of that is now grievously racist, according to Randy Weingarten.
And look at the Civil War. I mean, one of the objections that I have heard to the way in which Americans have been taught the Civil War, predominantly from the left, is that it often treats the slaves as people who needed to be rescued by whites. That the Civil War is a white savior narrative. Now, of course, it is actually predominantly true that the vast majority of people who fought in the Civil War were white, but not all of them were white. Some of them were Black, and many of them were slaves. And those people's contributions, quite obviously, should be acknowledged and celebrated, as I should say, the Florida curriculum does. There's a whole section on that. Now, are we to assume that anyone in the United States who has said at any point what I just did, which was that we should celebrate those slaves who fought alongside and within the Union Army for their own manumission, that celebrating them is an endorsement of slavery, that you're pleased that slavery happened? Of course you're not. As I say, this is a silly logical fallacy that in almost any other circumstance would be immediately recognized as such.
For 3 days only, CBDistillery.com is giving you an exclusive offer, and it's a great one. Right now, you can get up to 50% off everything when you use the code VIP. Choose from a range of carefully formulated CBD and other plant-based solutions for relaxation, stress, sleep, pain after physical activity, even mood and focus. They extract healing plant compounds and vital nutrients for your whole body. No artificial colors, flavors, preservatives, or sweeteners. Just 100% clean ingredients. Don't miss this exclusive VIP sale and get up to 50% off your order. Visit cbdistillery.com and enter VIP. That's cbdistillery.com and enter VIP. cbdistillery.com. Not available in Idaho, Iowa, or South Dakota. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.